How do you process raw files in Affinity Photo? Hello, welcome to my fourth video in my beginner's tutorials on Affinity Photo. This time we're looking at the develop persona and processing raw files. So let's start this by opening our raw file. I've got one here and I can just double click on it to open it in Affinity. Close that window. Now, with this file, you'll see what's actually happened is that it's changed the persona as it's opened it. So instead of being in the photo persona up here, we are now in the develop persona. And this is what we would use for processing raw files. This image is deliberately dark because I wanted to preserve the highlights down here. And that means I need to make some changes. Now, the changes are all done, or most of them are done over here. And we've got a number of tabs in the studio available to us. So I'm going to start with the basic tab, and under here I'm going to adjust the exposure and bring that up so that the general image is of the brightness that I want. Now that has caused the shadows and the highlights, so I'm going to check that, which opens that up. And if I just move that down so I've got a bit more on the screen, what I can now do is bring those highlights back to how it was with the detail in there. And I'm going to just bring the shadows up a bit. Don't want to go too far with it, but just enough on there. What the other tabs we have a lens tab which allows us to do lens corrections. Now I can see here I've got a warning to say that Affinity couldn't find a particular lens profile for it, although one appears to have been selected. I'm not convinced it's necessarily the right one from that. I would have thought I'd have been shooting with my 24-105 looking at that image. That's a bit more like it. So we've got the right profile on there. You see that's corrected, has corrected that. If I hadn't got a profile and wanted to do the corrections myself, I could use this slider to correct for any distortion in the lens. Now if you play around with the slider and want to reset it, in Photoshop it's double click on the label. That doesn't work in Affinity. You double click on the handle. I double click on that, that resets it, and I'm going to re-enable that. So we've got there. And the details tab is your noise reduction. So I'm going to zoom in, control and mouse wheel, and have a look to see whether I need to do much on noise reduction on this image. Actually not too bad. There's just a touch in there, which I'm not sure you'll be able to see on the video with it. I'm just trying to find an area that's particularly affected. So here we go. So we've got a little bit here, and I'm just going to bring up the luminance slider just a touch on there. That's the amount of noise reduction. The details in there, if it starts to go a little bit soft, you can bring that up a bit more. Don't really need to with this particular image. I've just spotted something here. We've got some chromatic aberration on here, quite bad around there. You can see the purple fringing. Back over to the lens on here, I can check chromatic aberration reduction, and it goes away and thinks about it. And you can see there it's reduced it slightly, and I'm just going to try a little bit of defringing on it as well and see if that helps as well. It has just a little bit. So we've sorted that out. Control 0 to fit the image to the screen. So now, what am I going to do with it? That's a reasonable start point with this. I could do a curves adjustment if I want to give a little bit more contrast. Don't want to do too much on here. That just helps a little bit with it. Maybe it's still slightly dark, so just push that exposure up just a fraction on there, and maybe just a little bit on the contrast, not too much, about 3%. And there we go. Now I've done those changes, the next step is a destructive step. At the moment, I can change any of those sliders. You saw me go back and change the exposure again after my first decision on there. And I might still decide my highlights need to come down a little bit. So I can still change things. In order to do anything with this, this is not true non-destructive editing. It is at this stage, but the moment I want to be able to save this, you can see there is no save option available in here. The only thing I can do is click develop or cancel. Cancel obviously forgets everything I have done. If I hit develop, look what's happened now. It goes through, does all those changes to the image, and it effectively flattens it down to a single layer. So it's not true non-destructive editing when you use Affinity to process your raw files. It's non-destructive until you hit develop, at which point all the changes that you have done have been baked into the layer that you're working on. I can now do other things on here if I want, other bits of editing and things like that, but I can't go back. Even if I change my persona back to the develop persona, there's nothing there. On the basic tab, everything has been reset on there. Everything's reset because I'm now doing things to this baked in image. So just be aware of that if you're processing raw files, that once you hit develop, it's baked in. Now I can do layers and things on here to my heart's content. So basically, the way I would use that develop step is just to do, as I've done here, the basic processing. And now, if I want to do anything else with it, I would do it at this stage. If I want to do an adjustment of some description, and let's say I wanted to change the white balance, I've got options here for as an adjustment. I'm going to say warm, so I've got that, and I can change that and warm it up as I wish on there. I'll close it, and that's a layer now that's non-destructive, and I can turn it on and off. So if I decide I've actually done that too much, double click on the icon and I can cool it down a fraction with that. So now I can come to save this, file, save. Where does it save it? Again, it asks me to create an AF photo file, so I just say that. But what has that file got in it? It's got these two layers. The background layer with the baked in development that I did in the develop tab, the develop persona, and this one layer over the top. Now I could add other layers, I could do black and white or whatever I wanted with it, which at this point, as long as I use layers, is non-destructive. But that develop tab is a destructive tab. Hope you found this intro to processing raw files in Affinity Photo helpful. Until next time, thanks for watching and keep making great photos. Bye for now.